making them slow down. It actually was a transformation, and they ended up winning a multi-million-dollar contract coming out of that they were surprised. At one point had a to-do list that was 110 lines long, and she was feeling really, really overwhelmed. So you sort of you solve one thing, you create another issue. And that's why systems thinking is so interesting. You just can assume that mechanical fix, oh, we're going to shift this, that means all of these things are going to fall in line. But they don't, because it's going to shift something else. What's the thing that you personally are willing to let go to make this happen?
Ready to revolutionize your content game? Meet Modern IQ, the AI tool that creates SEO optimized, plagiarism-free blog posts with just one click. No more writer's block or endless hours of content creation. Generate high-quality articles that boost visibility, save time, and slash marketing costs. Whether you're a startup or an established business, this tool is your content team, marketing expert, and SEO guru in one. Click on the link in the description to claim your free article and join forward-thinking entrepreneurs who are working smarter, not harder. The future of effortless marketing is here. Are you ready to dive in? In a world addicted to quick fixes and surface-level strategy, today's guest invites us to slow down and zoom way out, because what's really holding your business back often isn't what's on your to-do list. It's what's hiding in the systems you stop seeing. She's helped double revenues, spark multi-million-dollar joint ventures, and transform the way leaders communicate. Not by doing more, but by seeing things differently. In this episode, we'll explore how slowing down can actually speed up growth, what most leaders get wrong about change, and one simple shift you can make tomorrow to run better meetings and build smarter teams. She's made the invisible visible for brands like PepsiCo, Friday Baby, and United Way, and today she's here to do the same for us. I'm Linda Vo, and this is Inspired by Success. So please welcome to the show, Phyllis Dealy.
Hi, Linda. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you today about systems thinking and systems awareness. And we can cover a lot of different grounds, from your brand systems to your business systems to your talent systems to just even the competitive set that you're working within, and really understanding how you can connect some of those dots to make more strategic decisions.
I love it. I'm excited about this. I hope this is going to be a valuable episode for all the entrepreneurs out there listening and trying to scale as well, because I'm super excited. But before we begin, let's start off with one question. So if your current season of life had a book title or a soundtrack, what would it be and why?
Wow. I think I'm tempted to say the book that I'm writing, which is called The Awareness Factor. That's one. But really, I think if I'm just thinking about my own journey, I would probably call it Perseverance, a series of, failures and successes.
I love that. Why is that? Because this podcast is all about hearing about the successes and the failures.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit more about that, and take us back to some of your journey for those who don't know.
I started my career in advertising and marketing, pretty traditional industry at the time. Back in the early 90s, there wasn't social media, there wasn't an internet, there wasn't any of the stuff that we take for granted now. No iPhones, none of that stuff, right? We were buying television and print. And I started there. And then I think one of the reasons that I stuck with the industry is that it saw so much evolution and so much innovation. It just really kept it interesting for me. So growing from a really traditional start, and then through the internet, through social media, through programmatic, through all of the stuff. And now we're entering this next phase, which is the AI phase of that industry. And so, yeah, I've been an entrepreneur out on my own since 2002. And since then, I've had 3 different businesses. And right now I've got 2 businesses. So it's been a series of experimentation and, working on something until it doesn't work anymore, and then sort of looking for the next thing and catching the next wave and the next wave. And, it's been exciting, but it's also been hard sometimes. Really trying to identify, is this what I should be sticking with, or is it time to pivot, and who should I partner with? And so I've really gone through so many different iterations of what my businesses are and have been and will be over the last 25 years. It's been, I've had to have a lot of perseverance to say, I see my vision, this vision, I'm going to make that happen despite, some setbacks that we all have in business.
Yes, definitely. I mean, those setbacks help us grow too. There's a few things that I wanted to unpack from that as well, but I'm curious to know also, you've worked with giants like PepsiCo and other nonprofits. Can you share a transformation story that still excites you when you think about it?
Wow. Yeah. Let me think. I want to sort of protect a little bit of just some confidentiality on some of these things, but for one of my big Fortune 500 clients, in terms of the transformation, it was really getting them to, you talked a little bit at the beginning about slowing down and seeing that bigger system. One of the things that we do is we help companies come up with their pitch if they're trying to win new business or they're trying to get a big piece of business in-house. And this particular client was really just kind of throwing stuff in a deck. I mean, it was sort of like, here's all of our stuff, here's our standard stuff, let's just go get it, let's go get it the way that we usually want to get it. And we started working with them about 2.5 years ago and really got them to take a look at the way that they were creating these pitches and the way that they were winning new business. We made them go through a discovery process. We mapped it all out on a Miro board. We really went in and we thought, what's the reverse sell? What's this company going to say about what you're offering versus what they're offering? And they were like, yeah. Can we just get to the deck? And in doing it, in making them slow down as much as they sort of fought us on some of that stuff, it actually was a transformation. And they ended up winning, a multi-million-dollar contract coming out of that they were surprised that they won, I think. And it was an uphill battle, but they turned it around because they just showed up in this new way. They anticipated what their customer needed, and they didn't make it about them. They made it about what they're going to do for the customer. This sounds really obvious, but if you have a sales machine and you're used to pitching and selling in a certain way, it was transformational for them. And so we really helped them shift the way that they go after that new business and the way that they show up. So much so that they now actually are in another situation where their competitor is really pushing back pretty hard and more aggressively going after that business. So you sort of like, you solve one thing and then you sort of create another issue. And that's why systems thinking is so interesting, because if you don't think about it that way, you just can assume that mechanical fix, oh, we're going to shift this, that means all of these things are going to fall in line, but they don't, because it's going to shift something else. So as long as you're, knowing that helps you get ahead, and I think can help you stay ahead.
I like it because in business, when we're at the scaling stage, some people do look for the quick fixes. And
the most important thing you can do is to understand every single role in your company, what they do, document it, do that job. And then once you've mastered that job and you can define it and write it down, that's when you can bring somebody else in to do that job. That's really important, especially if you're starting 2 or 3 or 4 people. You might have 20 different roles that have to be filled, and 20 different hats you've got to wear. As a system, thinking about your people system and your talent system, it's really important to document what it is each of those roles have to do and how they're contributing. And how are you making decisions? Putting a RACI in place, which is a chart which helps you understand like who's responsible, who's accountable, who's, contributing or consulted on those things, and who's informed. Those kinds of things, and getting those a basic understanding of your people systems and what those roles are and how you're making decisions is absolutely critical if you want to get ready to scale. And I've made this mistake many times. You think that there's going to be a person you're going to bring on and they're going to take care of all of this stuff, right? Oh, once we have this person on, once we get that person, and it doesn't always, if you don't really understand what you're asking that person to do, I don't think you can be successful. And so I'd say that's one basic, just, getting the right people on the bus and then understanding what they're doing, and then start working together and honing how you're collaborating and working. I think, today, if you look at, let's talk about AI for a second. In our business, AI from a strategy and creative standpoint is really disrupting the business again, right? This is the, I don't know, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th disruption in this business. AI, you can start playing around with it, but if you start using it for your clients right away, you better get pretty serious about your security systems and making sure that if you're using one of these platforms, that it's a secure system that is not, that's protected, right? So that your client's information isn't just going out to inform everybody about these AI systems. I don't know if a lot of people understand that when you're just going to Chat GPT and you're typing in, I need this strategy, and can you do this? And you figured all your prompts out, you're putting that out into the world. And so that's a pretty important system that's new right now that a lot of people are not paying enough attention to.
I didn't think about that, because you're giving them all that data, and if you're giving all the confidential information and the strategies, that's giving it to them. I didn't even think about that, because yes, we do. A lot of businesses do rely on that. Yeah, the inputs, and oh, wow, that's
Yeah, you got to have a secure, closed kind of sandbox, right? So it's your version, and you're not sharing that kind of information with the rest of the system. Speaking of systems.
Yeah. And I totally agree about the knowing what each role in the company or the business does first before you hire out. And I've had to develop systems where it's in Dan Martell's book, Why Back Your Time. And what he does is, I already did that intuitively in my small business. And the things that I did, I just documented everything. I put it in, I filmed myself doing it in Loom, and then I documented it, and I was able to train the next person. And then I now do that hiring more people. I just tell them, document what you do and film it. And so if anyone leaves, there's a documented, every single role that is important in the business has like a document, especially a tracking document, step-by-step processes, so that if anyone leaves or a new person begins, there is something there in place that they can follow through. And I think training, having a great leader to train, and then hiring to see, well, I've got my assistant she's amazing, and I want her to be empowered to be able to train the next person too, and then I look over it, so that way I can focus on scaling as well. But I totally agree about those systems. My only problem is the finance part, because I'm trying to do my bookkeeping a bit, and then that is something that I'm lacking, because I've had multiple different finance, like other people that I've tried to hire in junior finance, they haven't done a great job, and I don't know where I'm going wrong there. What are your thoughts on that? You know what I mean? Because my strength isn't in the numbers and the finance part. I love doing all the other things like marketing and sales and growth and vision planning. Yeah.
Me too. When I had I've had that I had was Woodswood Dealy and Sons. It was an advertising agency. I did not touch the books. I wasn't involved at all. We had an accountant from the beginning. They took care of all of that. When I started Reinvent the World 10 years ago, I decided that I needed to learn that piece. And so I got QuickBooks. And did I use it exactly right? No, but what I did, but I was able to issue the invoices. I could see my expenses. And it is not my go-to sweet spot. It's not, but what I love about it is that I know exactly where my cash flow is. I know exactly what has to go out. It just helps me be on top of the business. Now, I will tell you that I've just recently, in the last year, hired a bookkeeper and an accountant to kind of step in. And it's hard, I think what I'm trying to figure out, Linda, is how do you delegate that, something so important to your business, your cash flow? Can I pay my employees? Am I paying my bills? Do I have what I need to invest in the business? How do you keep tabs on that without getting into the details? So that's something that I'm sort of relearning right now. And I'm still really nervous. I still go in and I look at I'm looking at the QuickBooks because I want to see where is it all? Did they send the invoices out? Did they do that? I think it's and I've been through a couple of accountants. I've tried a couple of them. I wish I could tell. I wish I actually had a good answer for you on this. I think it's trial and error. I think it's figuring out, giving up pieces of it, not giving up the whole thing. And then the most important is that you keep tabs on it, and you just have regular check-ins and regular touch bases, so that nothing is, at least for the first 6 months, I'm going to be on it every week. And we call it bookkeeping. My new operations person calls it, she's like, let's talk about bookkeeping corner. I'm like, okay, it sounds like it's pretty approachable bookkeeping corner. Let's just go there and we'll take a look at all this stuff. And it's helpful because she helps me keep it right in front of me.
You mentioned that operations, is it the operations manager? Is that, so yeah, if someone was a small, like an entrepreneur, see, I have my virtual assistant. She's basically my operations manager. But just say if you're starting out, you've got a team, but you need more organization. Do you recommend, and you have, just say you haven't got a partner, like a business partner.
Right.
I've heard on other podcasts people hire, the first thing is like an operations manager. Is that what you recommend as well? Yeah.
I wish that I wish that I had hired somebody or brought somebody in 3 years ago. I actually think my business would be twice the size that it is right now. I can see a difference in that she's been working with me for just under a year, and I had a lot of my operations. I mean, I had them in my head. I had them on Miro. I had them in some playbooks, just like you. I was sort of, sort of ad hocing, putting all of that together. She's just helped make it feels more legitimate. It's more organized. She's helped me move what was a very manual process into systems and platforms. So getting an HR system in place, cranking up our accounting system, putting hiring processes in place, like really shoring up job descriptions. I had all of this stuff and it was working, but having an operations person who's a real guru who loves that nitty gritty stuff has been pretty transformational for me and for my business over the last year. So I wish that I had brought somebody on sooner. I was spending money more on people doing the work, the strategists, the designers, the copywriters. And in fact, if I had just pulled some of that back and spent a little bit more money in operations 2 years ago, I think I'd be even further along.
So this operations manager had previous experience. Is that what you recommend? Or do you recommend somebody that knows the business and then knows all the puzzles of the pieces and how it works, and then they can become an operations manager? Or do you recommend, I guess every person is unique, every business is unique, and sometimes it depends on the skill level as well. But
I had both. She was a previous client, so she knew she'd actually been on the receiving side of my services. She was we'd worked together at an agency, so we had collaborative experience before that. And she had been at a small consulting startup, so she'd seen what really good operations look like. And then she's just kind of a natural. So I think it was sort of the perfect fit for me at the time because I trusted her. We were she's a good match for my a lot more creative, big out there energy. She's, she like
gets it done, gets
she
things
gets
done.
it done. It's
Yes,
amazing.
I love that.
You got to find your second. I think this is really important for every entrepreneur. Look for and find your second. Cast your second. And so maybe this is because I come from the advertising world and we think about casting, like there is somebody who is going to be maybe not the perfect match, but pretty close. Like you want to find somebody who balances you. You don't want to find somebody who's just like you.
I've heard, yeah, it has to match like I've heard even opposite, and to do the things that are really good that you are your weakness basically. So
right.
It makes it a stronger dynamic.
Balance. Yeah.
Yeah. What is HR systems? I'm curious to know what that HR systems you recommend.
So we're using a tool called Rippling, and it does all of our payroll and contracting. And, it also has benefits and all of that kind of stuff. You can do timesheets. It's an all-in-one system. We also looked at, QuickBooks has that kind of a function. There's a bunch of them out there, but I would recommend that you go out and just do a comparison and find the one that's going to give you the best fit. Depends on what you need.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to look into that. For the entrepreneurs out there that are doing it themselves and are juggling everything, how do you help them focus on the most important connections without getting bogged down? Because, I, for one, I'm pretty chaotic. Not chaotic, I'm organized, but I do have a lot on my plate because I've got my business, my family, my podcast, my health, my relationships, growth and expansion that I'm trying to do within the business.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on, and everyone wants a piece of your time, and you're trying to juggle a lot. So for me, I do delegate, and I thank goodness I've got a great team behind me, but I still feel like, when do I'm trying to hire more people and bring more people to help on board as well, to focus on the menial or non-valuable tasks that don't help with the growth. Because for me, I know that I need to focus on the growth, but how do you help them focus?
Well, I want to tell you a small anecdote about a friend of mine who's a very good friend who I've worked with for a long time. We mostly we're not working together now. We are we're in a group together and supporting each other. So first thing that I'd say is get a support group, find other entrepreneurs that you can meet with on a regular basis. That will give you so much perspective in terms of where you should be focusing. Not, looking for people who can give you some experience shares. This is that's one thing. But my particular friend at one point had a to-do list that was 110 lines long. 110 to do. And she was feeling really, really overwhelmed. And so I think, so first, make sure that you've got a community of other entrepreneurs that you can support. 2, don't do death by to-do list, because you're just going to stay down in the weeds. One of the things that we do at Reinvent the World is we do something called Reinvent Road Mapping. And I think it's transformational. It's based on a process called dragon dreaming that came out of Australia.
Tell us.
Yeah. It's documented by an anthropologist named John Croft, and he documented this. He was studying Aboriginal cultures, and one of the things that was really interesting to him was that they didn't look at sort of life or what had to get done in a linear way. First this, and then this, and then this. So they did this dreaming where they imagined that the future and the past and everything is happening at the same time. There's just these different nodes of experience. He took that and he translated it into a project management approach that he ended up calling dragon dreaming. And let me just tell you a little bit what sort of the components. I'm going to vastly simplify it. But he said there's 4 parts to any project. First is the dreaming part. What do I want to do? What am I envisioning? Then there's the planning part. How am I going to make that happen? Then there's the doing part, which is about 90% of any project. And then the 4th part of every project is what he called celebration. And you need celebration throughout the project in order to energize all of those different pieces: the dreaming, the planning, the doing, and the celebrating. And when you start a project, what I like to do is that I'm working with, let's dream. Let's go 3 years in the future. Let's pretend that's where we are. And we're going to look back on the 3 years and we're going to list all of the things that we've accomplished. And what does that look like? How big is that dream? What are all the different elements of it? And so you start with one dream and then you invite your team in. What else? What else? You want everybody to just create this beautiful big dream that is, you say it in the past tense, you dream really big. And then when you've got all of this up on the board and everybody's really excited, they're so excited that they could say they're 100% committed to making that happen. Then what you do is you look for the keys, the levers. You say, what is it on this board? Or are there other things that if we were to get those 4 things done would unlock that entire dream? What are those 4 things? Then we brainstorm that and we organize it, and we get down to the place where we've got what we call 4 levers for the business. And they usually end up following somewhere around, there's usually a people lever. There's usually a brand or a marketing lever. Sometimes there's an operations lever. Sometimes there's a sales lever. It depends on what the business is. And then you name those things. And I did this work with a very big tech company who was losing out to Microsoft and Apple. And one of their levers, we named the lever something really interesting and exciting. Their lever was big, sexy deals. We're going to get big, sexy deals, right? And, another lever for another company was shiny, happy people. But we named them so we give them energy. And then we can build out, if we get these things done, these sort of 6 milestones done over the next 3 years, that's going to move the needle for our business. And then we track it year over year. Do we get 50% of it done? Do we get 70% of it done? The reason that this is important is that often we get so far down in the weeds of tiny project plans. If you took that big dream and you tried to build a project plan for that, you would end up with a to-do list that has 300 items long. And people would get overwhelmed and then they would not do it. So this way, what you're doing is you're kind of distilling the most important things for your business. And what happens is when you just do those 4 things, all the other things that you need to do to make that happen automatically happen. It just kind of pulls them through. And it's been pretty powerful. We've done it for dozens of companies at this point.
Wow, it's something that I think I'm definitely going to do. In terms of the doing and the tracking, I guess I'm assuming assigning all the people in the task and who we need to bring on board to make these things happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually you have a leader, right? If you have 4 levers, usually you have a lever leader who's like, I'm going to make sure that this happens. It could be one of your levers could be, I'm going to, write a book. And then you map it out. How do I dream that? What am I planning? What am I doing? And how am I celebrating that? And it's a little bit, it's you're manifesting in a way that future. because you've already seen it. You really talk about it like it's already happening, and you're just kind of pulling the future towards you. And I've really seen it be transformational for teams.
That's beautiful. I definitely want to do this with my team too. And talk about celebration. Is that something that we should celebrate, after we've hit those goals and milestones? Because like I'm visualizing already, because last night I was just thinking I would love to take my team out after I hit certain goals with the business, because I'm dreaming big already and I'm trying to get them on board as well, because for the leader to be able to inspire and make things work, you got to have your team on board as well. If you have big
Yeah.
visions, but I heard this somewhere in a podcast and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so true. If you have big visions and big goals out of nowhere, that because I was thinking small, but then recently I said, why are we thinking small? Let's think big. This is what I want to do and I want to achieve this. They have to be inspired. They have to feel like it is achievable as well. So I guess
Well,
the celebration part comes into place, because sometimes people have limiting self-belief and think, oh no, this is too much work, because our brain automatically doesn't want it's sometimes,
yeah.
preserving energy, thinking this is going to be too much work for me,
Yeah.
but it's a leader's role to be able to inspire and get that vision to life and bring enough people. But where does celebration fit into this?
Celebration happens all along, and it should happen all along the way. So even in the dreaming phase, if you think in the dreaming phase there's a little bit of dreaming, planning, doing, and celebrating, you get done with the dreaming phase, and you're putting up your mood board or your vision board. That's a celebration. Then you move into the planning thing, and then you issue the plan. So milestones are celebrations, appreciation, gratitudes are celebrations, a planning dinner, an offsite. Hey, we're going to do the retreat for planning. That's a celebration because you're gathering people together. And so you want to build a little bit of celebration. And it's basically 25% of any project should be celebration.
Wow. Okay. That's good
Yeah,
to
and
know,
you think
because
about like you're kind of going through a loop. If you don't think about it as needing to be a linear process, first of all, inviting your team into the dream so they can add their dream to it, so they feel the commitment and the ownership is critical. And then when you get done dreaming, you celebrate that dream together. So I think it's, people think about celebrating like, oh, you have to earn this reward, or you've got to get here, and yes, you should do that for sure. Bonuses, commissions, all that kind of stuff is celebrating. Just acknowledging that you want to be more celebratory and that you want to recognize people, even in a monthly meeting, like, hey, who really worked towards our dream weaver this month was whatever you want to call it. That's a celebration. And so I would build it into pretty much everything, even into meetings.
I love that. I'm just curious to know. A lot of people, even myself, I've been guilty of it. Sometimes I'm so busy as an entrepreneur, I know that we need to have meetings. They're not structured, but I just get the most important things that need to be done to focus on. And
Oh, you know what? You are breaking up just a little bit.
oh, hang on a second. I'll just write the note down. 32.
There you go.
I'll edit
You're
that out.
back.
Okay, no worries. Even if it breaks up, the final piece would be edit out that part. Usually it gets a bit blurry sometimes, but the final piece is fine. So if I do break out, just let me know. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. So with team meetings,
Yes.
I know that I'm guilty of running ineffective meetings because I'm so busy, and I don't believe in having long, boring meetings anyway. Because when I was in corporate, we had those regularly team meetings that were just very routine, and it just had to happen. So, what's one quick technique anyone can use to make more effective, more efficient meetings that actually produce results and make people want to, start the week thinking like whether it's a weekly team meeting, a quarterly meeting, how can we run more effective meetings?
Yeah. I'm curious, do you do a lot of your meetings on Zoom? Are they're virtual?
Yeah.
So I would say the most important thing that here's the best meeting. Decide, like, make sure that you need to have the meeting. So that's the first thing. Less meetings are better meetings. Shorter meetings are better meetings. People's attention span, especially in an online, in a virtual setting, you have to, we're all trained to multitask, and our attention is it's so distracting. You can be sitting on a meeting and, probably even while doing this podcast, I don't even know. Like, I'm not looking at my phone, but I bet I've gotten 20 texts, and I've got X voicemails, and I've got so many emails. So if you're going to run a meeting, you got to be prepared to fight distraction. And it means you've got to keep people's attention. And one of the things we know, in addition to Reinvent the World, I also have a communications and pitch training company called Studio Reinvent. And if you just think about the number of thoughts that everybody has every day, it's somewhere around 70,000 thoughts a day. That's what's going through your brain. So think about if you've got 3 people on a meeting or 10 people on a meeting, that's 700,000 thoughts that you're competing with in the space of the time that you're meeting, right? That their brain's just like this 3-pound universe that has this whole thing. And your job, if you're running a meeting, is to get them to focus on what you want them to focus on. And what we pay attention to are things that are dangerous, that are threatening our survival, and everything we summarize or we filter out because there's just too much for us to process. And this is also true if let's say you have 4 people in a meeting, hours, they're going to remember 25% of what was said. And I often say this in our training, you've been to that meeting, like you've been in that meeting where 3 days later, everybody thinks something different happened in the meeting. And it used to make me really upset. But then I was like, what if we're just all remembering a different 25% of the meeting? So I guess that the point is, if you're going to run a meeting, you got to make sure that you've got attention grabbers and you're keeping focus for everybody in the meeting. I like to insist that everybody's on camera. If they're not on camera, you can assume they're doing something else. I like to get engagement at the very start of it's a 1-word open. How are you feeling right now? Or you can do something called a waterfall in the chat. We'll say, hey, everybody, tell me where you're going on vacation. I mean, it can be something very small. Talk to me about what you had for dinner last night. Ready? Everybody in the chat. I know they're sort of silly, but they create a connection. Everybody knows they're on the hook. They're participating, and they're participating early. And then you want to make sure that you're not having meetings that are running longer than 90 minutes, especially on Zoom. After 90 minutes, everybody needs a break. I try to keep my meetings generally to 25 minutes or 50 minutes. So if I can get it in under a half hour, great. If I can't, then it's a 50-minute meeting. And that's, just having a shorter meeting generally is going to help you have a better meeting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there too. And anything that can be done through other communication portals such as Slack or voice, just get it. Like that's what I do anyway. And I just get the most crucial elements that need to be focused on with the team meeting. Other than that, everything is just communicated through Slack anyway. Yeah. So with you, after working with multiple different teams, what's the most telling sign that a team member will embrace or resist change?
Wait, say that again, right? They're going to complain about the way things are, but they really don't like change. And so, yes, we are often trying to shift systems, and we encounter resistance at every turn. Resistance to the system change, the way that we're conducting the project. People get very stuck in their worldview and their understanding of the situation. They get stuck in their expertise. So I call it it's sort of a calcified expertise. They just build this wall. And I understand why that happens. But what happens if you're really hardened in terms of your worldview and your expertise is that you're not able to connect with the rest of the group in a way that is going to be collaborative and creative, and it's going to move the needle towards whatever it is that you want to do. So the first thing when I encounter that on a team is I do things like I teach them listening. I talk about the 4 levels of listening. Let's talk about it. I want to bring your awareness to how you might be listening right now. And my goal is to get you down to a level 3 where you're leaning in and saying, okay, I might not agree with that, but I'm curious about it and tell me more. If you can tap into people's curiosity, if you can get them to a place where they're willing to let their worldview go and get curious about what the other perspective is, I think you get them, right? Because then there's an energy there. You're creating that connection. So the goal always is to try to connect people to this shared vision, or connect them to their curiosity, or connect them to something that we can agree on. And even if we disagree about how we do it, if you can just get them to agree that something has to shift, you're about 50% of the way there. So I like to use learning and listening and, this connected experience with the other members on the team. That usually works. in some workshops, if people are really having a lot of resistance, we'll do what we call a letting go exercise. So we say, this is the vision. We know these things have to happen, but in order for them to happen, all of us have to let something go. So we're going to go around the circle right now. And I want you to think, everybody write it down. What's the thing that you personally are willing to let go to make this happen? And what do you think the organization has to let go of in order to make this happen? And you give them both, right? They get to say, well, I'm willing to let go of this idea I had that I thought was the right idea. We don't do that exercise at the very beginning because everybody like, I'm not going to give anything up. But once you create that connection, you get them listening to each other, then you can make those kinds of moves. And I just want to say, this is why I am eternally hopeful about the human condition and our experience, because I have found that people come through and people step up and people allow themselves to have that kind of connection. And it is really a beautiful thing.
I love that. That's powerful, because if everybody contributes in something that they can let go of, whether that be ego, control, what the business can let go of that doesn't work for the business as well. I think that's so powerful, and that could be incorporated into that dragon dreaming, because that's something that I'm already visualizing it already, what I'm going to do. The celebration part, I'm doing a planning with the team. And if we hit our target this year, which it was most likely, but to, reward the team, we need to do something together. We haven't, because my team are virtual, and I'm thinking of doing that. And then I love the things, the dragon dreaming, but adding that element of letting go into that as well, because that would be so powerful, and having a vision board as well of doing that and getting everybody on board as well. So that's so valuable. Guys, if you found that valuable and you could use that with your teams, I hope you could leave a comment. If there's any suggestions, if you're watching on YouTube and you think of any suggestions, let us know in the comments as well. And of course, if you're listening on the podcast, please hit that follow button. It does help the show grow. Another question is, for small business owners, what's one systems thinking approach they can implement without spending a lot of money? I know we've got so many tools out there, but is there something that you can recommend? Any advice for something practical that we don't have to spend so much on the systems?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think just learning about systems awareness, and it's just something you have to learn. And there are a ton of resources, which I'm happy I can share after the podcast, but there's a ton of systems thinking and systems awareness research out there. And a couple of things, like what kind of feedback are you getting in your business? It's a positive sort of reinforcing feedback loop where something you're doing is working and you're seeing positive results. You pay attention to that. Like, what's happening? Why is that feedback happening in my business? And what does it mean? Not taking the time to ask the question, what's the root cause of that? Why is it that that's happening? And I'll give you a really tangible example. Working with a nonprofit who had been investing advertising dollars year over year over year. And then something happened and they decided they had to shut down the advertising. And then they started to pick it back up. Well, they were measuring their advertising ROI on a 12-month basis, but in fact, it was an 18-month buying cycle. So it was an 18-month cycle for people. So advertising they're investing in this year actually wasn't having an impact until 18 months later in the following fiscal year. But they were evaluating the efficacy of that spend in the 12 months. They said, so then they'd reduce it for the next year. And what happened in the next year? It went up. They're like, look, we spent less and we did better. So this must be the right budget level. Then they went to the third year, did the same thing. And what happened that year? It went down. They're like, this doesn't work. The root cause of what they were measuring they weren't looking for they weren't evaluating the feedback in the right way on the right time schedule. And if there was a moment to look up here and say, oh, well, maybe we're solving the wrong problem. Maybe we should be spending this on 18 months and measuring the efficacy on 18 months instead of a year. I don't think they would have gotten themselves in the situation that they did. And so that's just one really small, tiny example. Slowing down and asking those questions. Why is that happening? There's a technique called the 5 whys, which is really frustrating. for people, but is really effective at getting to what's the root cause of what's really happening here. So you can solve that. If you're just solving the surface level issue, you might just be you're just treating a symptom. You're not getting to what's really causing the issue in your business.
I love that. I'm just taking some notes here. That's fascinating too. You've seen a lot of businesses at their peaks and valleys, like you mentioned, that business there, that nonprofit. What's one lesson on resilience you'd like to share with someone facing a rough time, a tough time in business themselves?
I think the biggest thing is to know that whatever happens, it will be okay. It sounds really trite and awful, but I have been in some very dark places in my entrepreneurial career. Very dark places. Do I have to file for bankruptcy? How are we gonna end this business? Or how are we gonna get out of this situation? We had a lawsuit. You get through it, and you can't think too far. And when you've got those things, you have to think really far in the future. I'm gonna get through it no matter what, whatever happens, this is gonna be okay. And then you have to think, like, what's right in front of you? What am I gonna do tomorrow? And when I had my advertising agency, we were deciding to sort of walk away from it. We had a series of losses. Clients had sort of stepped away. Like I said, we had a lawsuit. We had a client who didn't pay us like $400,000. Like, I mean, you can imagine it was. And so what we did is we made a decision tree. We're like, okay, if this client renews, then this. If this client says no, then this. And we just built the decision tree out. And then we didn't have to struggle with every single decision. We just watched where the dominoes went, right? This, then that, this, then that. And we made that in advance so that when the things happened, it was really clear what the decision was. We were able to do it at a time that it was not as emotional as if we had just waited to make those decisions in the moment. I think that was probably the biggest gift that I got in terms of advice during that time, which was a really tough time.
Wow, that sounds like something really powerful that a lot of entrepreneurs can, because why wait till the very bad things happen?
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to think about the bad. You do have to think about the bad things. I'm a pretty positive person, which drives my husband crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Sometimes I think if you're in a crisis,
be more solutions.
I really didn't like the disaster planning, but if you're in a disaster, you need to have a plan. So I guess it's a little bit of both, but I wouldn't spend too much time on it unless you're like, yeah, we might be in crisis in the next 6 months. So let's really plot out what happens if. It's a little bit like buying life insurance. That's what your insurance person always tells you. Okay, we're going to talk about all your worst case scenarios. But
it's very interesting. If you could give yourself advice on the day that you launched Reinvent the World, what would it be? Anything that you would do differently?
It's a good question. What would I do differently? You know what? I think I would say the biggest mistake I made at the beginning of launching Reinvent the World is I didn't have enough confidence in myself as an entrepreneur on my own. I'd always had partners, and I stayed out of the spotlight for a long time because I wasn't confident enough to be in the spotlight and to be creating content and to be putting myself out there. And the truth is, I was confident enough to. I could have done that. I was afraid, and I wish I hadn't been so afraid. I wish I would have gotten out there a little bit earlier on some of that stuff. And, I think that would have made a difference. That's probably my one regret is I wish I would have just been out in front a little bit more.
I guess it takes
more
a
comfortable
bit of
behind the scenes
practice.
sometimes.
Yeah. What does success mean to you? How would you personally define success?
I would personally define success as, really building and living the life that you want, like just being happy and fulfilled. I feel very fulfilled in my life right now. I feel very fortunate that I have built a business. I built 2 businesses, and I love what I do. For me to be making money, to be surrounded by a team that I just love that, and to be able to support my family and have, all of that along with it, that feels like success to me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's something that we should all strive for, I guess. Yeah, that's why I love being an entrepreneur, to be able to impact lives, to be able to build, to be creative, to go through these challenges. And even though at the time it could be frustrating or stressful, once you overcome these challenges and prepare yourself for the next stage of growth, it's so rewarding. And to be able to impact, I feel fulfilled as well, because I get to learn, and that's what I love about being an entrepreneur, learning as I go. So yeah, is there anything I've missed, any key messages you want to leave with the audience before we go?
Yeah, I feel like I should have one. I don't know.
If they want to follow you and find you as well, maybe.
Yeah, I'd love to have you. You can follow me on LinkedIn. That's where most of my content gets posted. You can check out reinvent.world is my website, and I'll be posting a lot more content on there. And then also studioreinvent.com. Yeah, I just love helping people communicate better and connect and to dream big. And I think as an entrepreneur, surrounding yourself with the right people and the people that you love, like having that group, finding your team is really, to me, the most important thing that you can do as an entrepreneur, is to surround yourself with smart people who respect you and who you respect, and kind of go forward together.
Awesome. What's the secret weapon behind every top CEO and entrepreneur? A game-changing executive assistant. Hermesi gives you access to elite EAs who supercharge your productivity. From payroll and admin to social media and customer support, they handle it all so you can focus on growth and big picture decisions. These aren't your average assistants. They're expertly trained, thoroughly screened, and equipped with the latest AI tools to work smarter and faster. Ready to delegate and dominate? Get 15% off your first 2 months with code INSPIRE15. Don't wait. Visit Hermesi, that's HERMESSI.com, and take back your time today. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. Take care.